Hot Sauce presents Twi and Me. With Twilight's help, I eased myself painfully down onto a couch. Nurse Mercy, back in the Ponyville clinic, had done a great job with the bandaging, but with the wound in my side, although well on its way to healing, was still throbbing painfully, and I'd run out of the little candy-shaped painkillers that I'd been given. Luckily, there was an open bottle of dandelion wine on the coffee table, and I reached across and took the bottle gracefully. "Oh, you're not going to drink, are you?" The little unicorn looked on in concern as I poured myself a glass of the wine with a grimace. Nurse Mercy. Nurse, what the... Okay. Apparently she's saying all this. Nurse Mercy said you shouldn't drink alcohol until you're feeling better. Oh, okay. That's what Twilight's saying. But there's no indication that Twilight's saying that. Okay. Nurse Mercy said you shouldn't drink alcohol until you're feeling better. Look, Twi, I said, pausing to knock back a quick mouthful. The warm, sweet liquor was already doing me more good than all the painkillers I'd taken. I got hit by a manticore's tail. I think I'm going to have a drink to celebrate the fact that I'm not dead. Nurse Mercy be damned. Twi giggled at my swearing, but then, her face filled with remorse, "It's all my fault. We never should have gone into the Everfree Forest. I almost had you killed." I smiled at her and shook my head. "It wasn't your fault, Twi. You were just trying to help me. And if you hadn't reached me in time, I'd be in a lot worse shape than just having a bunch of puncture marks in my side." "What in Equestria are you talking about?" Twi frowned. "You leaped in front of me." "Nah, I was just trying to run past you, you see. I didn't have to outrun the manticore, I just had to outrun you." I winked to her to let her know that I was joking. Twi was not great with picking up even the most obvious jokes, so you had to be careful. Twi giggled. She had a throaty, gentle little laugh that you didn't hear often. I'd been trying to get her to loosen up a little, and it seemed to be working, but she was still obsessed with returning me to the human world after I'd been brought here by accident through one of her spells. "Aren't you going to join me?" I asked, wagging the bottle in front of her face. "I can't possibly drink the whole bottle all by myself in my weakened condition." Twi eyed it with longing. "Oh, don't tease me. You know I've sworn off alcohol." It was true, she had, for she had been drunk when she'd cast the spell that had accidentally dragged me into Equestria rather than the sample of extra-dimensional plant life she had intended. She had been collecting plants from the various universes that bordered on Equestria, and it was usually a simple thing to bring a sample through a small portal she'd opened up. But around a month ago, after a few too many shots of vanilla lemon vodka with Pinky and Rarity, Twi had come home and thrown herself back into her work, and instead of a sample of plant life, it was me who ended up getting sucked through the portal into Equestria. I'd been here for a few months now, of course. After trying all the magic she knew, Twilight had taken me to see Princess Celestia, but the news hadn't been good. The princess had told us that although drawing things into Equestria was quite straightforward, there was no easy way to send things back to their own universe. Apparently, and that's where the explanation became a bit hard for me to follow. The universes kept moving around at random, and predicting which one will be closest to Equestria at any given moment is well nigh impossible. And so I was stuck here. I'd moped around for a week, as you might expect, worrying about my family and friends back on Earth, but slowly I'd adapted to life here in Equestria. Having to be vegetarian and also eat dessert 3 times a day wasn't all that bad, but the ponies were pretty cool. They'd welcomed me with open arms, forelegs, and here in Ponyville there weren't any essays to write, exams to sit, or other pointless mundane crap like that. that had filled my pretty disappointing overall life back on Earth. And so I started to enjoy living here, and more I was wanting Try not to find a way to get me back home. But the stubborn little pony refused to be diverted from her latest project, and she spent day and night obsessing about it. Although recently I'd managed to get her to take breaks from her experimentation and research, but she always seemed to somehow find a way to involve her work with whatever little activity I dragged her off to. Our ill-fated little walk through the pleasant flower-filled meadows around Fluttershy's treehouse was the latest example. I'd been getting Try to tell me the names of all the different birds and insects and plants that we had encountered. I knew she loved showing off her knowledge, and spending time outdoors in the endless sunshiny days of an Equestria spring was much more fun than being stuck in her laboratory and watching her fill test tubes with strange coloured chemicals in a seemingly endless succession. Equestrian flora and fauna overlapped with ours in a lot of ways, but there was often some strange, punny aspect to them. As we walked together through the meadow fields, we found buttercups that in Equestria taste like real butter. They were Try's favourite, and she'd finally cajoled me into trying some. And they'd been creamy and delicious. Sunflowers that shone so brightly with their own light that you could barely stand to look at them. Snapdragons that snapped at you when you tried to pick them. And so, at last, I decided to try picking some daisies instead. And having found them to be just the same as the ones you get back on Earth, I made a little bouquet of them and surprised Try with them. "For me?" she cried in delight, taking the bouquet in her mouth and straight away starting to eat it. "How did you know daisies were my favourite?" And as I watched her happily chewing on them, I suddenly realised I was in love with the little lavender-coloured pony. I guess I'd been trying to fight the feelings for a good while now. When I'd first come to Equestria, I'd been a little freaked out by all the talking ponies and dragons and so on, but you'd be amazed how quickly you get used to things. And the ponies were adorable, with their big eyes and cheerful faces, their ability to talk and their human mannerisms, and their round little bodies that seemed like they were made from marshmallow. They were quite unlike real ponies or horses, except for odd times such as this one, with Try munching on the bouquet, just like a real pony would, a single white petal she'd miss sticking to her lips. But it was one thing to think of them as people, and quite another to fall in love with one. As we walked through the flowery meadows, the gentle buzzing of bees in our ears, the glittery spring sun setting in the little brooks that we hopped over into streams of tiny diamonds, my heart became filled with increasing panic. I was in love with Twilight Sparkle, and she probably saw me as nothing more than another interesting sample from an alternate universe, or even worse, a friend. Try had been watching me for a while now as I looked downcast, but she, in her own little way, completely misinterpreted the reason for my sudden dejection. Try was like that. She wasn't good at understanding emotions, especially the emotions of others. I guess it was that variety of naivety that so often goes hand in hand with genius. And so she walked up to me, and getting up on her hind legs, she placed a forehoof on my shoulder and said with sisterly concern, "I promise I'll do everything I can to get you home." I looked at her, and the soft kindness of her big violet eyes filled my heart with a terrifying mixture of longing and anxiety. But then I saw them sparkle with sudden intensity. "Oh, I've had such an amazing idea," cried Try.